Housing affordability across the United States is the #1 most sought after topic in real estate today, right now. Today, what I'm going to talk to you guys about is what's happening in the multifamily and single family expansion sector, predominantly surrounded around affordable housing, and not only about affordable housing, but how so many of you can take advantage of the financial benefits of providing housing for the housing shortage, especially in affordability components built into real estate today. One of the biggest missing boats that people don't realize is that there is so much money to be made to be able to help sustain, develop, and parlay affordable housing across the United States. One of the big things that really stemmed me to do this today is the fact that, see, we already know, we've been in this industry since 2016, really pressing hard since 2018. And over the course of the last 5 years, the one consistent thing that has been dominant in everything that I see is that it has become more aggressively pronounced that affordable housing is the massive need. So much so that it's almost becoming a pandemic where they're sitting back going, look, we need housing so bad, it's a crisis. They're calling it a crisis now. And so the housing affordability issue across the United States isn't just like a housing affordability issue. It's now a housing affordability crisis. And the big thing is, how do we create a solution for this, but yet still make money doing it? And so the National Multifamily Housing Council, which we're members of, there's a fee to be a member of this. It's a very small, tight-knit multifamily community. It's the largest multifamily community that exists across the United States. In fact, every single January, we all fly out to whatever given city it is. This past year, it was over in San Diego, and thousands and thousands and thousands of bankers, multifamily syndicators, lenders, all the biggest to the smallest, investors, and anybody who's anybody in multifamily, from owning 5 units up to 5,000 units or above, are at this conference. Lenders looking for developers, lenders looking for syndicators, buyers, investors, and everybody under the sun is down there. And so the National Multifamily Housing Council, every year they do data, and they're a big advocacy group for multifamily on the legislative level to be able to push housing. And this year, one of the biggest components that we have noticed in the multifamily space is how everything, I'm talking 100% of everything that's happening right now, from the councils to all the administrations, legislation, and lobbyists, has to do around affordable housing. Now, how does that pertain to us, and what does that look like in our ability to generate capital? If legislators, ladies and gentlemen, go out and they put policies together that benefit developers, buyers, investors, it's going to continue pushing housing, multifamily housing specifically. I got the annual booklet that comes in, and one of the things that stemmed me to do this video today is that it talks about the multifamily leading firms, okay? One of which I never felt like I would ever be able to be one of the leading firms in the United States. And now I look at it and I go, over the course of the next decade, we will be one of the leading firms in this book. It's because most people don't look at the top. They look at all the noise in the middle. And I sit back and I look at this and I go, you know what? We're just a small tangent away from being where some of these largest companies are right now, because we're paying attention to what happens. Now, you don't have to be in this book. All you have to do is say, what do I need to do as an individual to take my small piece of where I am right now and where I'm going? And let me give you a little glimpse of what is being supported for you guys, investors, for me, for the vast majority of people that are looking at real estate and housing as the sector that needs to be developed right now, okay? So this first article, and every single article in here, ladies and gentlemen, every single article in here has to do with housing affordability. The main topic on here is it says, in recent years, the demand for quality housing that is affordable in the communities of choice have increased dramatically by the supply, but the supply has not kept in pace. And so as a result, there are far too many communities across the country that are not accessible to all people, okay? Now, 1/3 1/3 of America rents homes, ladies and gentlemen, or multifamily. They're renters in the housing sector. That's 1/3 of the U.S. population. And so that's a massive number. Now that constitutes for 38.9 million people that live in actual multifamily housing units of in excess of 5 units, okay? So this doesn't constitute for people that are living in short-term or long-term rentals and single-family dwellings. This is just people that live in multifamily that have 5 units or more. So when you guys hear us talk about advocating for developing multifamily of 6 units and 8 units, the main reason that we press in that direction is because that constitutes for 38.9 million people across the United States that we're target marketing to be able to go out and sustain housing for. 1/3 of the U.S. population. And so if we know that there's that massive of a market, then why not make sure that we're pushing in a multi-billion-dollar sector that is in massive need today? And so we say resume up. Because if you resume up from single family, you're going to be helping people along the way. You're going to be helping your financial pocketbook, and then you're going to resume up into 6 and 8 unit apartments, which is what is needed right now to sustain over 1/3 of our U.S. population. Now, through the advocacy of the National Multifamily Housing Council, it is committed to support the residents who call our communities home and making the case for greater housing opportunities and equality on their behalf. Okay, next article. Okay, now look at this, guys. The National Multifamily Housing Council supports credible and proven policies. Okay, this is the legislative advocacy towards affordable housing. This is how bad it's needed right now. And this is what groups like the National Multifamily Housing Council are advocating for with lobbyists at a legislative level during the legislative session every single year in February or March, nationwide, down in Washington, D.C. This is what they're pressing, okay? They're advocating for policymakers who resist political expedience but flawed policies. For example, they want to be able to advocate against rent regulations, okay? Now, I know that sounds like a contrary to what we're talking about, and if we're sitting back going, okay, well, if you want affordable housing, why would you want to reduce rent regulations? Because what happens, ladies and gentlemen, is that if you land up going in and put rent regulations, we can't develop. As developers, we can't afford to build. Nobody's going to build for free, okay? And the government back in the 1980s, they went in and they tried building housing for our U.S. population in the low income and affordability sector. They were horrible at it. They failed miserably. So back after the Reagan administration, they went in and they started putting policies together to motivate builders, contractors, developers to go out and build housing that's sustainable and affordable for the vast majority of the United States. And as part of doing so, they put policies together to incentivize developers and motivate them to go out and do this. And so there's stuff like cost segregation, there's bonus depreciation, there's affordability components you can put on your housing that you get tax incentives, tax abatements on property taxes that motivates these developers to do it. So what's happening today is they're sitting back saying, hey, policymakers, we have to advocate on a local level and on a state level to be able to help developers go out there. We want them to get permits quicker. We want the process of construction to be more friendly for dense housing. So they've even put advocacy groups together, like one that's called, this one that is unbelievably amazing is called the Yes in My Backyard Act. It's the YIMBY Act. And what the YIMBY Act sets and does is they expand tax policies that preserve and encourage investments into multifamily. So instead of investing in just the stock market, you as an individual can actually become a limited partner in a lot of these developments, which we actually seek out through SEC, which we actually seek out through syndication. We say invest with us because of the safety in where housing is going right now. You can go out and make better returns investing in housing than you would going and investing in a stock on the S&P 500 or in the NASDAQ or in the Dow. You can invest in multifamily housing. So there's the Yes in My Backyard Act and policymakers and nonprofit organizations that are advocating for more policies that give tax incentives and policies to benefit development. Now, one thing that I love most about the YIMBY Act is that it is a bill and it's a grant program. And this bill requires community development. It's a policy that promotes high density, single family and multifamily housing. Now, here's what's ironic is I remember back in the late 1990s, early 2000s, when I first started developing real estate, and I would go in and look at a piece of land and I'd say, okay, can I take this 1 acre lots and can I divide them into half-acre lots? And I remember going in and getting massive resistance from all of the people on a local level on the economic development sector of these municipalities. So much so that it would tie me up for 2 years where I'd have land, money, and access to resources tied up for over 2 years, and nobody would help. Everybody would fight and push against me. Today, on a federal level, they're saying, hey, if you guys want federal funding on a state level and you want those federal funds to come on a state level, then you have to promote and advocate for what we're in need of nationwide, and that's housing. And so no more of this bullshit where you put regulations on developers and you restrict development based on density. We want the density. We need the density. We want to take these areas where there's vacant land and we want to develop it into housing. And I know that most people sit back and think that development is an undertaking, but the reality of it is it's not. It's all a day in the office, and there's some education that needs to take place. But as municipalities become more development friendly, it's going to become more investor friendly for people just like you and just like I. And so it's given us open doors to be able to go out and start advocating for this sector while we can still go out and make massive profits. That's what's cool. Now, another group that's coming together is the HSC. It's the Housing Solution Council. So on a state and local partnership to advocate for solutions of national affordability due to the housing crisis, okay? Now, they're pushing policymakers that are pushing back on rent regulations because one of the big things is it limits our ability to develop affordable housing. If we go into places, and let's take Texas, for example. Right now, we've had 2 pieces of land tied up for an excess of 18 months. We haven't turned the keys on buying it, and nor have they sold it. We put in a first right of refusal on this land. And when you talk about the Dallas metro area, there is over 8,400 people that migrate and move into the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area every single month. Over 104,000 people from July of 2023 to today have moved into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we're pushing into May of 2024. So if we get over 8,400 people moving into one area every single month, where do these people live is the big question. And the reason I talk about these 2 lots that we've had tied up since in the last 18 months is because we can't build. And the reason we can't build is because the rents are too low. Yes, we're building affordable housing. There's not even enough rooftops for people. But if we go out and we can't afford to build it because we go bankrupt doing it, who's going to build? If you go bankrupt doing something, who's going to go out and build it? That's the big question. And so what happens is there's so much rent controls nationwide, and the government sits back and say, hey, we're going to build affordable housing, but we're going to put these rent parameters on you, and we're going to come down and we're going to limit how much rent you charge people to make it affordable. So what developers do is they throw their hands up and go, whoa, I'm out of here. I don't care about the tax incentives because I can't even build it. If I build it, I'm going bankrupt. So who's going to build if they go bankrupt? So what policymakers, what the National Multifamily Housing Council is doing, what HSC is doing, what YMBY is doing, they're sitting back going, we're lobbying so that against rent control, because with rent control, we have no ability to develop and continue adding to the multifamily housing sector. So we're sitting back going, hey, policymakers, lift these parameters off of developers so that we can go out and push rents a little bit. Yes, they're going to be a little bit more expensive, but at least this way, we have the ability to go out and develop. And the economy, as miraculous as it is, will sustain itself in a threshold of reasonability. Because what the price that people pay marks is what their abilities are set after. That's what sets the price of a loaf of bread. That's what sets the price of a Subway sandwich. That's what sets the price of what you're driving around in your cars. That's what sets the price of gasoline. That's what sets the price of all the commodities that are on your grocery shelves, is what people can and will afford to live. And once it hits a certain cusp and a certain threshold, people just throw their hands up and say, I'm done. I can't afford it anymore. So then they start migrating and creating solutions to start creating financial affordability in other ways, to be able to eat, to be able to shop, to be able to clothe themselves, to be able to live, to be able to drive, based on what the living wage is. And that's what pushes the living wage for employers to pay more money. That's what pushes merchants to have more affordable components in food, commodities, and end products. And it also is what pushes developers that hits a natural rent cap based on the sustainability of housing, rents, affordability of housing. It will naturally take its place on its own if you allow the natural course of economic growth and development worldwide to actually plateau and create a solution for itself by allowing developers and people just like myself and you to go in and create affordability. Now, I'm going to end on this, ladies and gentlemen. It is absolutely everywhere. No matter where we look, everything we look at, support residents, resources advocating housing equality and affordability. It talks about cusping and seeking to provide resources for renters and housing providing support for positive rental housing living experience that's affordable. Housing affordability toolkits, the housing equity guide, equity and inclusion toolkit for diversity and strategic improvements involving success and affordability, supplier diversity initiative. Everything that we look at, no matter where we go, it's about housing affordability for all. And this is a letter to legislators right here, ladies and gentlemen, that's talking about what is in need for affordability. Let me read you what Sean Wilson Gino wrote to the legislators in regards to affordability of housing. HSC will be organized as a 501c nonprofit organization. Its mission is to educate and encourage voters to elect officials to support pro-housing solutions and reject rent regulations and other policies that limit housing opportunities. We will consider additional strategies to support pro-housing, anti-rent control efforts, and candidates more direct on the state and local level as needed. If HSC determines it is in the best interest of its mission, we have set an initial 2-year fundraising goal of $50 million in order to achieve the objectives listed above. So these people are putting advocacy groups together, millions of dollars towards these advocacy groups, predominantly to promote and advocate for affordable housing and incentives for developers on a legislative level nationwide in Washington, D.C., so that people like you and I can take advantage of it. So when we sit in front of a room and we're talking about the components that you need to be investing in, and we're promoting this, it's because policymakers, tax makers on a governmental level, from the mayors, from the president, down to the House, the Senate, down to local government and mayors, they're sitting back promoting housing. And where people are sitting back in their tunnel vision, trying to fix and flip homes that are already existing, they're sitting back going, we need more. We don't need existing to look better. We need more in general. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what our nation is pushing towards because of the crisis that currently exists in the affordable, multifamily, and single-family housing market. Look, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the most important housing updates that I've done all year. And in order to continue advocating for housing in general, it is your duty to learn how to take housing out of the ground. The fix and flip world is truly dead. It's a pain in the ass industry. And as much of an undertaking as ground up construction might seem to you, it is not. It is simpler and more streamlined than fix and flipping or long-term burst strategy holding existing real estate. The time is now. And 5 years from now, the same opportunity that exists today might not exist for you then. Policymakers might already have all of the abundance of contractors and developers that they're in need of to be able to make these changes across the United States. The question is, will you be one of them? Or will you be a spectator on the sidelines cheering from the stands, wondering how you could have taken advantage of these opportunities if you wouldn't have sat on the sidelines, contemplating, reconsidering, and evaluating whether you should take advantage of opportunities that exist today? And ladies and gentlemen, stop being a sideliner and a spectator from the stands. It's time for you to get on the field, and it's time for you to start playing the game. The time is now. The opportunity is yours. Will you embrace it? Will you take advantage of it? Will you be a part of the solution or a part of the problem? If you want the opportunity to take advantage of learning how to build ground-up construction in the single or multifamily sector, then click and subscribe to my YouTube channel. We have free resources for you, thousands and thousands of videos, and hundreds of hours of content to teach you how to do exactly what we just talked about today. Click and subscribe, pound that thumbs up button, and ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to recommend some ground-up development videos at the end of this video right here to help you start in your investment career in single family, moving into the multifamily sector in housing. Let's go out and crush this affordability issue that we have across the United States. Become a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. I look forward to the success of our nation and the success of you individually. Keep on compounding your success.